when the pupil is ready, the master appears, and so on, right? And in different languages and different cultures, the same saying is said in slightly different ways, but it's saying the same thing, okay? But that's really the one that is most commonly known. There's 3 learning positions, right? So if you can see that, right? Number 1 is the student learning position. Number 2 is the teacher learning position. And number 3 is the observer or examiner learning position. And that was my second learning position, right? As a teacher. Even though I'd been teaching for a year and a half up in the Leicester School, I attracted what I was putting out there. And I attracted brawlers, right? They just wanted to come in and fight. So we had plenty of opportunities to test if it worked, right? And I tell you, it was uncomfortable. Okay, it was uncomfortable because we had a lot of, gritty characters, right?
Welcome to another Martial Mind Power podcast. I'm Jatinder with Sifu Lak. And Sifu, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Very well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Yes, I'm good, thanks. I'm excited today because we're not going to do a flick. We're going to go to a certain topic and we're just going to have a conversation about that. So over to you on that.
All right, cool. Thank you for that, JT. So today I've actually picked a specific koan from The Art of Thinking Without Thinking, which is this book right here. It's available on Amazon. So anybody that's interested in picking up a copy of this, you can go there and order yourself a copy. But today's koan is following a conversation that JT and I had earlier this week. And we thought, you know what, let's go into a deep dive on this one and then see what comes up. So are you ready for it?
Yep.
So this koan reads, when the student is unready.
Sorry, Lak, what page is that again?
It's page 333.
333.
Right? Page 333. And it reads, when the student is unready, the teacher disappears. All right. When the student is unready, the teacher disappears. So we're just going to show the artwork for the viewers that are watching this on the video log, right? It's an image of a school classroom with some school desks and some school chairs, the desk chairs, which are kind of turned over it and sitting on top of the desk, as you do at the end of a school lesson. At the end of the day, so that the cleaners can come in and clean the floors and make your classroom nice and fresh. So that's the image there. So let's dive in. All right. So when the student is unready, the teacher disappears. So what came to you on this one?
Yeah, this is a very interesting and philosophical one. I mean, we've had interesting conversations around this one in the past. So obviously those things are popping up for him in my mind. I mean, we're all familiar with that old saying, isn't it? That when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And from Lak's insights, there was a slight different twist on that, in the sense that it's actually when the teacher is ready, the students appear, right? And in that same kind of context, the opposite of that. So when somebody's not ready for the information, the teacher could disappear. And, that's what's basically coming to mind without going too deep in just at this moment.
And then this is the fourth one, which is when the student's unready, the teacher disappears. Right.
Yeah,
so you're spot on. So you've basically got all the different permutations and combinations of that, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
So just to clarify for the viewers, right? The student is ready, the teacher appears. The student is unready, the teacher disappears. Then it's the flip side. The teacher is ready, the student appears. When the teacher is unready, then the student disappears. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
I guess really the key thing here is, okay, so let's take this in order, right? Let's start with when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Now, this is the one, there's many different ways that people say this, when the pupil is ready, the master appears, and so on, right? And in different languages and different cultures, the same saying is said in slightly different ways, but it's saying the same thing. Okay. But that's really the one that is most commonly known: when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So do you want to dig into that one?
Yeah. So I think so I'm just going back to my experience with martial arts. I was trying to go back in my mind thinking, all right, when did I start martial arts, or what was going on for me at that time? And I think it was just challenges at school at the time, where obviously being a Bruce Lee fan, looking for martial arts, thinking that'd be cool. What does Bruce Lee do? But didn't actually know. And then things at school where you're thinking, okay, how do you deal with situations and scenarios? And then I remember a friend of mine who actually had joined the class not too far from us. And he actually told that he started it, or he'd been doing it for a while. And he told myself and another colleague, and we were like, yeah, let's go. And we checked it out, turned up. So it was almost like we were seeking it, already to embrace it. And all of a sudden, the messenger appeared that then took us to the teacher that started to teach the martial art, for example, right? So I think that's what the first kind of scenario is, that we were ready and seeking that information. And therefore the universe was almost like thinking, okay, right, here's a few things that you can do for that to happen.
Oh, awesome. And then how did you find me?
So that was again, that's a funny one, right? Because so we met, how long has it been? About 10, 12 years, something like that.
Been over a dozen years.
12,000 years ago, we're talking.
Yeah, 12,000 years ago. Yeah. And for the listeners and the viewers, if you didn't know, we met through the martial arts school where JT was a student of mine, and that's how we connected initially. But how did that connection happen is really the question here.
Exactly, and I'll share that in a second. But it was after joining Lax's classes, it came to my awareness as to what was going on with me at that time, for that to come by me, right? So the way it happened was I think I was just like literally going up the stairs, and as I was going up the stairs, I see this leaflet on the floor near the door through the letterbox, right? And it's a picture of Bruce Lee, and my first instinct was, "Oh, what's Bruce Lee doing on the floor?" So I picked up the leaflet, and it said JKD classes, Greenford. And I was like, no way. I was like, do you know how long I've been waiting to learn this martial art? Right. And as soon as I got it, I basically turned up at the event that Lax was teaching. And that's when we first met, was that moment we walked in. And the first thing you did was just embrace us. Like, you just said, yeah, welcome, come and check it out. So that's how we first met. But then the realization was when I was actually doing the martial art, and Bruce Lee Jeet Kune Do is basically called the way of the intercepting fist, right? And its premise is based on like kind of attacking as opposed to defending as well. Whereas traditional martial arts, like when you go up or you learn self-defense, you're learning self-defense. So growing up, it was all about learning to defend oneself and, just go on along with life and stuff like that. But doing the JKD stuff was almost like, well, you got to attack life as well sometimes. You got to move forward. You got to intercept things that are coming your way. So having then studied some of the lessons, that became apparent that that's what was going on for me at that time. It was almost like a growth period for me to say, all right, what am I doing next? How am I interacting with life? How am I going to pivot on these things? And these are all the things that were coming up in the trainings for me. So that's how I made that connection that, okay, that's what's basically happened there.
So that's how it was. That's how you attracted it, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. And it's no coincidence or accident that these things happen. And I'll share my story with you. And it's amazing how it happened. But it was 3 months before our first child was about to be born. I woke up one morning and I had a compulsion that I needed to find Bruce Lee's martial art. And I was into Bruce Lee when I was a kid. But, I'd kind of forgotten about that over the years. And this one morning, it was, I need to find his art, and it was right here. It was calling. It's the only way I can describe it. It was right in my gut. And at that time, it was in early 2000s. I didn't know Bruce Lee had a martial art. I didn't know it had a name. I didn't know where I was going to find it. Google was in its infancy, so there was no information on Bruce Lee, let alone a martial art that was connected to him, let alone something that he created through his own process. So it was a vacant space. And I remember having a conversation with my wife about, I've got a calling to do this. And I said, I don't know why, but I have to do it. And her response was, this bit of a lousy time to take up a martial art, 3 months before, we're about to have our first child. And I was like, I know, but I said, I can't explain it. And I think she's always understood my soul's callings, and she's always saw that and realized, you know what, if I don't let him do this, or if I don't support him with this, he's never going to really step into his true power. And there's something going on here which is beyond us. And she always supported me. So she said, all right, then if you must, then go for it. So I did. I looked around, I went to Wushu temples, and I was living in Manhattan at the time. Didn't find anything, I went to Wushu temples, just to kind of explore other martial arts, because I really wasn't sure what this whole thing was all about. And it, even that didn't feel right. And then it was just by accident, well, I say accident, but by fate, should I say, that I'd happened to be consulting in Midtown for a client who ran a quantitative trading desk for one of the big tier 1 investment banks, and he wanted me specifically to go in from the vendor side, because I worked for a trading systems vendor at the time, to go in and help him do some work on their system. And so I did. And I went in, and, at that time I was always carrying my rucksack with my gym gear, and I was a member of the New York Health and Racket Club, and I'd just go into whichever one was closest one, because they were spread out all over Manhattan. And I happened to go into the one, I think it was on 46th Street. Went into it after doing the consulting one day, and walked past the studio. And in the corner of my eye, corner of my eye, the very corner of my eye, I don't know how this happened, but I caught the words, learn Bruce Lee's martial art. And that's a lot of words to catch, but they're the words that they just kind of popped, like sucker punched me from the side. And I remember just snapping my neck, looking at this, thinking, what the, I couldn't believe it. And there it was. Learn Bruce Lee's martial art, and that was the first time I realized it had a name. It was a thing, Jeet Kune Do. What is this Jeet Kune Do? I was absolutely fascinated, and I had to learn more about it, and that was it. I found out what days it was on, and I booked, and that's it. Rest is history. So there definitely was will and intention there, and I literally stumbled into it, walked into it, and amazing. Honestly, I can't describe the magical feeling that happened in that moment. I mean, I was clearly something in me made me ready for it, even though I wasn't, the night before I had no recognition and realization of this. And the next morning I need to do something, right? Completely left field. And there you go, teacher appears. And, that teacher as well, I think he must have been, I really think this guy is some kind of angel, right? And I tell you why. Because he was a younger lad, he was younger than me. He was at university, and I was 29 at the time. And he was a skinny lad, right? But he could pack a punch. And first time he punched the focus pads, I thought, wow, how did you generate so much power? And I couldn't generate that much power then. And I was just completely wowed. Uh, but he had a way about him, and he always used to say this, and I've never shared this with you, JT, but his name was Frankie, right? And he was part of the New York Martial Arts Academy, which back then was affiliated to Ted Wong, which was one of Bruce Lee's sparring partners. So I landed in a reputable martial arts school that had a really strong lineage with Bruce Lee as well.
Mm.
And Frankie, he had a way about him. His ambition was to become a public speaker.
Mm.
He wanted to, do what I'm doing right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not have any desire to do any of that. I was scared of speaking in public, right? I had no plans of teaching martial arts, let alone teaching self-mastery, self-realization further down the line. I had no idea any of this is going to happen. And it was almost like he came into my life to show me that this is what you need to do, almost by saying he wants to do it. And I had no idea, didn't really kind of register any of that, but he inspired me, he empowered me, right? Mm-hmm. And he educated me at the same time. And that became the mantra, and it wasn't until years later that I realized that he'd sown some real fertile seeds. And all these years later, that these flowers are blooming, and now that we're able to spread the beautiful fragrance of that moment that happened back then in 2003, right? 3 months before my firstborn was born. And here we are. So really, honestly, magic, complete magic, how this has all happened and transpired and where we are right now. But that's just when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? Yeah, because then the journey goes on, and then there's realizations and experience around the other kind of permutations and combinations around the student and the teacher relationship, right? Because ultimately what we're talking about here is not just a student-teacher relationship, but something far greater than that, right? Up until the moment a student meets a teacher, right, there is something transpiring to bring them together, right? And that's what we're talking about right here.
That's crazy. I was just going to say that. Okay, so you said that was around 2003, yeah? So when you came back to the UK, you were training up in Leicester, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
And that was, would you say that was one of the first kind of JKD schools in the UK, like in that area?
So here's the thing, right? So I trained in the US for a year, and so I was working in Manhattan at the same time, and I'd suffered kind of burnout, and we had some personal things going on, and it was a really low point, and I just needed to get out the whole city Wall Street thing, and I ended up coming back to the UK. But before I came back to the UK, I remember going on these search engines at the time, and it wasn't necessarily Google, it was Netscape, and there were other
sounds
ones.
About right. Yeah,
there were other search engines at that time as well, which I can't remember to mind right now. And I remember finding, I don't know how, but I remember finding this martial arts school that was about to open up in my hometown, right? And they hadn't opened, so I actually called over while I was in the States, and they said, actually, well, we haven't opened yet, but we're going to open. But so by the time you get here, we'll be open for maybe about a month, maybe a couple of months. And I couldn't believe that there was a school in my hometown, because I was originally in London, so I ended up going back to Midlands, where they just started teaching Jeet Kune Do, literally a few weeks before my arrival, and I took several years out in order to do that. I think it was 3 years. 3 years I took out just to train martial arts and work on my own personal business ventures, but I spent a lot of time training full time, and that was an amazing experience because that's where it all kind of like really started to take place. Again, no ambition to teach, no ambition to do anything other than just follow the journey and see where it takes me. And here we are. So even that was kind of ready made for me to come back to, and it was
That's amazing, isn't it? So that would have been what year would that have been then?
That was 2004.
2004. Yeah. So I was just trying to like create like this mental timeline in my mind about when I became aware that there is actually a school teaching JKD. So it must have been around that time, because when I was training at that, I would have been doing the jiu-jitsu and the kickboxing stuff around that time. And I remember hearing about these classes that are available in Leicester. And I was like, damn, man, that's like 2 hours away. I don't even think I was driving at the time, And I was just like, how am I going to go there? Like, well, how am I going to learn this? There didn't seem to be any other schools. You're right. You couldn't find that kind of information, even though there might have been others, but probably were other schools around. And then, so that's why when I saw that, like similar to yourself, seeing it from the corner of the eye, like saw this picture on the floor, as soon as that came in, I was like, wow, it's actually landed on my doorstep. How can I not do this? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just quite interesting how like that connection, that actually knowing about Leicester, but then meeting you that were from Leicester, but in London, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You came to me, bro.
Exactly. And the story behind actually teaching was an interesting one, because I was obviously quite passionate about it at that time, and I'd already done my instructorship. So I was an associate instructor by then, so I could go out and teach. But I didn't really want to, and I didn't really have any ambitions to, even though I'd taught while I was in Leicester for a year and a half. Taught, I think it was 6 classes a week, up to 6 classes a week, which is quite a lot. And it was through conversations with my colleagues actually that my colleagues decided to get a group of people together, saying, "Oh, we'd like to kind of learn what you've learned. We'd like to learn the martial art. We're kind of quite inspired by your passion, and why don't you put a class on?" And I remember there being about 6 or 7 people that started to bug me about it. Mm-hmm. And I remember speaking to my wife about it, and running it past her. She said, "Well, you should do." And this is again where she kind of recognizes things that I didn't recognize, and she says, "Just go for it. Just do 1 class a week and see what happens." So I thought, okay, I'll do 1 class a week. So I did, and this was basically under a bit of pressure really to keep these guys happy. And then we thought, all right, let's just see what happens. So I did. I put 1 class on, and it was only 2 months later that I put the second one on. And it was like, all right, let's do this twice a week, maybe 2 or 3 months, and that was it. So since then, we've always had minimum of 2 classes a week. I still work in the city as a consultant, IT consultant in trading systems and other domains. But the constant has always been the martial arts ever since. And it's just grown into where we are now. And, like I said, just keep spreading that fragrance, because it's important actually that you do sow fertile seeds in fertile ground as well. And you apply, the nutrients and minerals and the vitamins and the sustenance that it needs to help grow that seed and let that flourish, into a blooming flower and so on. And I think just by having stickability, as Dr. Napoleon Hill would say, is that's nurturing that seed. That's what gives it the energy to sprout and grow and then flourish. and we've been going strong. The London classes have been going over 15 years now, even through the pandemic. 2 years we did classes via Zoom, and we've been a year back in the studio post pandemic, and again, it's going from strength to strength. So just keep doing it, really. Just keep doing it. There's nothing to gain out of it. In fact, there's a lot to give. It's the opposite way around, and that's where we are with it. So yeah, so again, it just shows that there's three learning positions, right? There's three learning positions, right? So if you can see that, right, number one is the student learning position, number two is the teacher learning position, and number three is the observer or examiner learning position. And that was my second learning position, right? As a teacher, even though I'd been teaching for a year and a half up in the Leicester School, but to do it on your own without the guidance of your senior instructor and so on, and then just really go a solo on it. It's vulnerable and courageous in a situation all at the same time, and just stepping into that. So it was interesting to do that, but that's been massive, and then since then been grading and students, and in the examining position. And as you teach, you also need to observe what's happening, and you start to kind of also pick up from that standpoint as well. But moreover, when you've got junior instructors or assistant instructors or affiliate instructors that are also in the space, and you're training them to teach, you're now become the observer. So that's we've got many instructors that have come up over the years, and watching them train and teach in class as well puts you in the observer position, and you learn so much through that process. So the one thing I think is clear on this is you're an eternal student. It doesn't stop. You don't stop learning, and you got to just keep going. So I think it's important to make that point, because if anyone's embarking on a learning journey, a journey of growth, go into it for the long term. Go into it for the long term, because a short-term view is very short-lived. You won't really flourish, because you're not nurturing that seed. That seed's never going to really sprout into the flower that you want it to be, and you'll never really get to the point where you start to first spread that fragrance, and that even once the flowers bloom, the fragrance comes after. Okay, right? It's this process of maturation, right? And you've got to, again, keep going. I can't say that enough. Stickability is a really powerful word.
Absolutely, man. And what's interesting, as you're sharing that the other part of this whole conversation is coming up for me as well, because I started thinking, well, why did I stop doing martial arts? What was going on there? And I remember the kind of time frame was around like GCSE time initially, right? So there was that time when you took off time for revision, and that stopped the momentum in a way, right? But then I went back to it. But then when I went back to it, the teachers started to change, because the main teacher that was there, he went away, started doing his own, I think just work-related stuff. So he had to, move away from it. So the teachers started to change. So that there was fluctuation going on there. So in terms of how I was getting trained, it was on and off as well for a good couple of years. And then when we had this, it just got passed down. So I remember the guy who used to teach there, who was a student, we trained together, and then he took over the classes. And then even with himself, he got to a stage where he had to then just leave work-wise, and he had to move out and kind of thing. And when he moved away, the students moved away. So the classes just came to a stop, And so it was interesting to see that, like, even when somebody's journey changes, the kind of knock-on effect it has, intentional, unintentional, and what can come out of that, right? So there was like this great big gap in my life, like, okay, not doing martial, what's going on? So I went to different schools, started learning with different people just to see what was going on. And I was used to a certain vibe, a way of doing things. So when I went to different places, it wasn't quite the same, even though they were great schools, right? And I'm fortunate in the sense I don't think I've had like a dodgy teacher or anything, right? In any of the martial arts I did train. But it was just interesting to then see the different dynamics between the teachers, the students, the different classes, and what was going on there. So, you know, like afterwards, left all those places, only till I came back with yourself that it reignited everything again. Do you know what I mean? But it just changed the whole dynamic of everything, because it was that, like I said, it was at that moment in time in my life where I was pivoting, I was changing, I was thinking, okay, where am I going? And even like when the first time you taught us that pivot technique, I thought, oh my goodness, like look at the like similarities in what's being taught and what I'm going through in life. Right. So that, I just wanted to share that. So that the teacher changed, it went away, the student disappeared in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Until it reignited itself.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely a case of when the teacher is unready, the student disappears. Right. And also part of that is when the student's unready, the teacher disappears. Right. And in your case, I think it was a bit of both before, when you left that, because, you had other commitments, you had study commitments towards the GCSEs, and you needed to put time, energy and effort into that. So as a consequence, you had to take some energy away from other competing priorities, such as your martial arts class. And that's okay. It's okay to do that. But then the teacher changed, and now that whole environment changed, right? And your connection to that teacher wasn't there. So just by your teacher being displaced by a new teacher, now the teacher's become unready as well. So there's loads of different ways that this can present itself. And it's really kind of recognizing that actually it happens. Sometimes, the student being unready can be a consequence of, I've seen over the, we're into our 16th year teaching now. Over these years, 16 years, 15 years teaching, 16th year into JKD London, right? But before that, I taught for a year and a half as well. So that's 16 and a half years, over 16 and a half years. But over that period, I've seen a variety of all of these combinations. Now, student is unready and the teacher disappears is an interesting one, right? Because this is what the koan's about, right? When the student is unready, and it does sometimes come to a point where the student feels like they've learned all they can learn, and quite a common milestone where that happens is when someone becomes a black belt. Right. When someone becomes a black belt, quite often students feel that, okay, they've achieved the pinnacle of martial artistry. That's it. They're free. They're going to go and drop that and go off. And, now they're black belt for life. Okay. The black belt is just the beginning. Okay. The black belt is just the beginning. Now, I always like to use this analogy of a painter. Right now, when a painter first has to learn how to paint, he has to learn how to hold the paintbrush, has to learn how to apply paint onto the paintbrush. Then he's got to learn how to apply the paint on the paintbrush onto the medium. Let's just say it's a canvas, right? And then he's got to learn how to create the different kind of effects, the different strokes and dabs or whatever it might be. Okay. Learn how to mix up paints, you learn how to use different type of brushes and different types of tools. Now, black belt level is really understanding how to use everything in your paint box tool set, okay, including the paints and so on, to create all the different kind of effects and brush strokes and so on that you might want to create on any given medium. Yeah. After black belt comes your personal expression, right? Is as you kind of really embed things into your subconscious mind and you start to really truly express yourself without thinking anymore, with it just being autonomous motion or intelligent response, as I like to call it, is what happens after that is, what picture do you create as an artist? Do you create a portrait? Do you create a landscape? Do you create an abstract painting? These start to become the expression after the black belt level. Okay. And that's a long way to go, because that's where it starts to get really hard. Okay. Why does it get hard? Because you haven't really understood what your authentic style is, right? So if you look at artists like Van Gogh, okay, Van Gogh had a very unique way of painting. Okay. Very unique way of painting. He used to paint motion. Yeah. He used to paint in such a way that the images had inherent motion within it. Okay, if you look at Starry Eye, for instance, yeah, and if you look at someone like Leonardo da Vinci, okay, he was more into the portrait type of images, and you know, the that style of painting, okay, and each artist has got his or her own personal expression. Okay. Now, martial artistry above the black belt is really kind of, first of all, understanding who am I, and how do I express myself into the world honestly, staying honest to myself, staying authentic to myself. But you have to find yourself first through the art of painting. Okay. Martial arts is no different. Okay. You're doing it through martial artistry, through combative motion. Okay. And learning what works for you and how you can be effective as a street fighter based on different types of opponents, right? You know, an artist has different types of mediums, whether it's a canvas or whether it's paper or whether it's material, whatever it might be. And martial artists has got, you know, up against different types of fighters. It might be a shooter, might be a crasher, might be a touch and go fighter, and so on, right? So your application is based on who you're working with, right? And that kind of hopefully gives you an idea that above black belt is where the true martial artistry really starts. Okay. It's so if that's the case, a lot of people fall out of martial arts way too early. Okay, way too early. And actually it's after the black belt where you get into the degrees and the dance in levels is where you start to really show. Now, you know, the thing is, you know, if you've got a sharp sword, okay, right? Let's say as a black belt, you are a sharp sword, right? When you're kind of ascending that process and transcending that process and you get even sharper, the difference is going to be really minute. Okay. The difference between sharp and razor sharp is minute. Okay. Why is it minute? Because it's already sharp, right? Sharp is sharp, but something that's razor sharp is even more dangerous. Okay. You need less effort to be deadly. Okay. But personally, people see less progression. Okay. But people around you will still see massive progression because you're so far ahead. Okay. But it's a personal journey. It's not about anyone else. So
I was just going to say, it's very interesting. Yeah, you've been sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. Like, there's a lot of things I'm thinking back on now, which I hadn't quite thought about, right? In the sense that one, you know, when I was talking about, like, we had quite a bit of changes in like the instructors in between. And there was like one instructor, which I really connected with, but he was only with us for a short period of time. And this instructor gave me insights that the other ones hadn't given me insights, right? There was like some breathing techniques. It was like, you know, controlling the way your chi works and all that kind of stuff. And even though he was teaching jiu-jitsu, he was coming up with things like, well, if you get yourself into, you know, a fight situation, it's going to be like close combat. And he goes, the thing to learn in close combat is the best martial art in a way is boxing for you. And I was like, what? And, you know, you're getting this instructor who's now expanding my mind, right, into different ways of thinking. Because it's similar, because, you know, you're sharing about like the black belt. He was the one who said, okay, you got your black belt. What does it mean now? And I sat there and I went, I'm not sure. And he goes, exactly, it's confusion. This is where the straight training begins. Yeah. It was like what he shared with me was like, yeah, it was what I needed at that particular time. right? So it's really interesting in that. And then what you're saying about your evolution of, as a martial artist, like you say, because most of my like insights and stuff came at that, exactly what you're saying, at that stage where I was, okay, what does this mean? How does this look like? Where am I going with this? So I didn't train long enough in that because the classes stopped. So I didn't go for any dans or anything, but I did start experimenting with different martial arts. Yeah. Right. So there were some martial arts which are not even interested in those ones. And there's some were like, okay, this looks interesting. And in a way, start to amalgamate the best of what I liked and actually enjoyed doing. Yeah. Right. So, for example, when I came across kickboxing, I really, really enjoyed it. And what I took from jiu-jitsu was the fluidness stuff, being like water, that kind of element. Right. And then JKD, I mean, I did a bit of Aikido, tried that out. That was cool. Tai Chi, built other bits in between. And then we came to JKD, and JKD just, for me, it put everything together. Right. It was just like, it just made sense in the way it was being taught. So that expression, that self-expression of what you learn and how you become, it's making sense to me now as to how all of that came together to form what I liked and what I wanted to express in that kind of thing. Perfect. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And also just for the listeners and viewers as well, this podcast isn't about Jeet Kune Do, okay? It's inspired by Jeet Kune Do, and some of the teachings are inspired by Jeet Kune Do, and our personal journeys is what we're sharing here. But really, this applies to all martial arts. And this is from someone that's a practitioner of multiple different martial arts as well. And as JT done so in the past as well. And this is how we would like you to receive this. This isn't about this art is better than that art. Is completely misses the point, right? It's about the underlying mechanics that are happening, right, as a consequence of this. So just
it's that thing, is it's like what you end up liking the whole process. It's so try it all and then see what you like. It's we're, like you said, we're inspired by Bruce Lee. So I think about Bruce Lee said, take what's useful and discard, everything else, and make it add what is uniquely your own. And I think that's what we're trying to express here, isn't it?
To a point, right? At a point, should I say? And the thing is, research, as Bruce said, research your own. Use what is useful, discard what is useless, and add what specifically you own. Now, that happens when you understand your tool set. You can't start doing that right from day one. You can't stay, hey, you know what? I don't like this. Fuck off, right? And I like this. I'll have a bit of that, and I like what's happening over there. I'll have a bit of that. And, I'm going to add my own shit into this, right? And make my own fucking concoction, right? You're never really going to understand yourself because you haven't really kind of attained any mastery over your tool sets, I mean, if you just take, a mechanics toolbox, and you want to, tighten a screw with a Phillips screw head on it, right? And you use a flat screw, it's not going to be as powerful as using one that's got a Phillips screw head on it, right? You've got to use the right tool. You can't use a spanner, right, to bang in a nail. I mean, you could do if it's heavy enough, but it's not the right tool for the job. It might get the job done. It might fuck up the nail in the process, right? You might bend it or something. You might have to have a few tries. You might even bash your hand in the process, right? And catch your finger or whatever it might be. You might even damage whatever you're trying to nail the bloody nail into, yeah? But the point is, if you use the right tool, less likely to do any of that, make any of those mistakes, right? So over time, once you know how to use your tools, what the right application for it is, only then can you, turn around and say, well, do you know what? I don't like doing, a certain type of kick because my body doesn't feel right doing it. My body doesn't allow me to do it easily. I've learned it, right? But I've got to a point where I realize it doesn't work for me because I'm too slow in it. My range of movement's not there, okay? My mind doesn't go into that direction. So I'm going to leave this one, right? This isn't working for me, right? And then that's when you discard it, right? Or you think, or you might feel like, well, you know what? Somebody might make this look easy, but for me, it's really difficult, right? I'm struggling with this. It's hurting doing it, but I managed to do it. I managed to get to a state of mastery. I understand where I can use it, but now I'd rather use something else in that application, right? And that's when you start to discard things. You don't just discard things willy-nilly, not knowing how they work. And this is the thing: is you should really allow yourself to understand what works where and what doesn't work where, right? So you can make an informed decision. Also, when I say where, it also depends on who. So, for example, if there's techniques, right, that may work against someone that's shorter than you, but won't work against someone that's taller than you. Okay. And vice versa. Techniques that work against someone that's taller than you, but won't work against someone that's shorter than you more effectively. For example, someone's taller than you, an uppercut's easier to reach, okay, because you're underneath the target, okay? But if someone's a lot shorter than you, you're going to have to squat in and chamber and get underneath their chin in order to uppercut them if the chin is the target, as an example. So it's more work. Why would you do that? Just knee them in the freaking chin, right? Right? Because your knee's closer than your hand, right? So just to give an example, the idea is to use the right tool, but you can only use the right tool when you know what tools to use in which situation. And that comes through practice and learning your tool set, learning your art efficiently. So student can become unready for many different reasons. One being, you don't continue and you think you've got to a certain level. I've also seen many, many different things happen at a black belt level. Okay. Black belt level, humility and humbleness is really important. Okay. At that point, right? Humility and humbleness is really important, especially if you're embarking into the instructor process, because, you've got an obligation to inspire, educate, and empower your students to bring the best out of them. And so that they can really be their best. And in order to do that, you must also put your best side forward, not your worst side forwards. Okay. But as a consequence, so that's, when the student's unready, but as a consequence, quite often teachers, right, who are the complete opposite, right, of that, can also teach you a lesson, right? So teachers will teach you from their worst, or teachers will teach you from their best at the same time. Okay. So the worst that teachers got to put forwards is serving you, because that's what you need to learn. Maybe you're learning what you don't want to become. Maybe you're learning the things that are missing in your life. Maybe you're learning the things that you want in order to become aware and alert and strive towards attaining that. And that way, that teacher will now start to disappear, because now that teacher is no longer serving you, right? Because you'll become aware actually what you need to be served, what you need to learn. All right. Students can also become unready when, and part of the whole black belt thing is your teacup is full, right? So you might have heard the saying, the usefulness of the teacup is in its emptiness. In other words, if knowledge is tea and you put the tea into a teacup and the teacup becomes full and starts overflowing and brimming, right? How are you going to put any more tea in it? You can't put any more knowledge into it. You need to drink the tea, assimilate it, absorb it, right? Empty that teacup, and so you can pour more tea into it. But I've seen it many times. Students either come with a full teacup, in which case they're not ready to learn anyway, and they're insistent they want to learn, and really you can't really teach them anything, right? So these days I rather just tell them, actually, you know what, it's not right for you, because you already know. There's nothing I can teach you. You already know what you need to know, and you're best, to find an alternative solution, because it's pointless trying to force your tea into someone's teacup when it's full, right? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to waste my time because it's not going to benefit either party, teacher or student. So there is that element. So, everybody knows I know it all. someone that, when you talk to something about something, like, yeah, I do it this way and I do it that way, and I've got this and I've got that, and I did this and I did that. And it doesn't end. It doesn't end until either that student realizes that they're actually not ready to learn, and they become aware that actually, hold on, do I really want to learn? And if I am going to learn, I need to change my attitude. Okay. And this doesn't mean it's good or bad. It's just a fact that it happens. And that way, you can help them. Because ultimately, if you want to bring the best out of someone, then they must be willing to change and willing to put some effort into it. And if they're blocking themselves, there is no point, right? You're wasting time, effort, energy, money, everything, right? All of it is just wasted. Whereas you can give your attention to someone else that actually deserves it, someone else that actually is open to it, right? That's my philosophy anyway. There are many teachers that will say, hey, come join, we'll take your money. And that's okay, because we don't care if you learn or not learn. That's your prerogative, not mine. But I think there's a symbiotic relationship here where one must harmonize and have a symbiotic relationship and synergy with what's happening here in order to really bring it out. You can't nurture something if you're blocking it, right? You can't do that. It won't work. So it's important that that there is that. Now, what I've started doing recently is initiation. Okay, so if you sign up to completejkd.com, which is our online learning platform, there's a pledge that we ask our students to sign. And our students have to sign a pledge that says that I surrender to the teacher because I want to learn, right? And as a consequence, there's going to be honor and respect between us both. But, at the beginning of class, we bow. We bow at the beginning of class, we bow at the end of class. And I, as a teacher, bow to my students first, okay? I extend peace, respect, love to my students first, right? And then it's up to the students to extend it back to me, right? Out of the similar virtues as well, okay? And this shows my surrender to my students, right? My commitment to my students. So this is initiation is not about ego. It's about moving all the crap out of the way so you open, right, to cultivate yourself to be the best you can be, and allowing someone that's ahead of that process to guide you. That is it. That is it, right? So when the student is unready, the teacher can disappear. And when that happens, and these are the kind of reasons that a teacher would turn their back on you, is for those kind of aforementioned things at very high. And there's many other scenarios around that, which are very circumstantial. So at a high level, these are the kind of like principles and philosophies that apply in these particular situations. Right. And then the next one I want to really kind of go into is when the teacher is ready, the student appears. Right. And I want to share part of my journey when I first set up my school. And I guess I was always ready, and all these students appeared and are like, you need to start to teach and put on a class. I didn't think I was ready, but I must have been in some way, shape, or form, because I had the pressure from my colleagues and family members to do it. I had a brother-in-law that also wanted me to do it. And so whether I was at home or whether I was at work, I had a bit of pressure to do it, which is positive pressure, right? Which is good. So I must have been ready. I must have been ready. Something in life was pushing me to learn and to continue to grow in my path, only for me to then, as I said, give it away later on. It's almost like it was a pay it forward kind of mechanism going on. So, and then after that, when we first started the school, I was in a place where I thought, well, am I really ready? Have I really got it? And I really wanted to kind of build my confidence that, I could fight and could really make it work. So when we first started the school, I attracted what I was putting out there, and I attracted brawlers, right? They just wanted to come in and fight. So we had plenty of opportunities to test if it worked, right? And I tell you, it was uncomfortable. Okay, it was uncomfortable because we had a lot of, gritty characters, right? And that's okay. But because I was attracting it, my vibe was attracting my tribe, and that's what was my vibe was at the time, because I needed to prove that I was enough to myself, not to anyone else. And a couple of years down the line, and I kept a close group. I didn't open it up. I had about a dozen students, and I kept it closed for the first couple of years. I didn't really want to make it a commercially open school at that time. So after the first dozen or so students, that was it. And we take chunks at each other, really, to be honest, and really pressure test ourselves, black eyes, bleeding noses, split lips, the whole lot, and it was consistent and constant. And a couple of years down the line, it was kind of, okay, that's enough. I know I'm okay. I am enough. And there's nothing I need to prove to myself anymore. I wasn't proving anything to anyone else, and nor did I talk to anyone else, because it was an internal journey. But I needed to know that if what I'm teaching to people worked, because otherwise it wasn't worth doing it. And it was, for me, an integral part of the process. And we did at that time get people coming from other places as well to try and pressure test us. And it was a key part of that process. And I know that process was because of me, because of what I was going through and what I needed at that time. And then after that, I started to, I think after that, it wasn't short after that that I'd met you, and you'd started to make me aware of the personal development elements and aspects of the way I taught, and the positive impact this was having on people's bodies, minds, spirits. After that moment, I decided, well, actually, you know what? I want intelligent fighters. I want thinkers. Right? And I want thinkers because I want people to really come in to change themselves through process of personal growth. And it became a mental journey at that time. So I went from body to mind. And so that started happening. And that went on for, I would say, about 5 years, 6 years. And it wasn't long, especially after my spiritual quest and insights, and that I realized, actually, this is no longer about becoming intelligent thinkers. This was about the art of not thinking and stepping into the unconscious space, the space of energy, the space of spirit, right? The space of your true self, okay, your true essence. And that's when I went from the mind into the spirit. So we started off body, mind, spirit. And that's how my process evolved. And then I started attracting students that were more holistically motivated to grow in this lifetime, in this physical existence on Mother Earth. And this is where we are now, So we not only teach how to kick ass, right? We also teach you how to, think like a warrior, and finally how to expand like a warrior, how to how to shine, right, in your true brightness. So body, mind, and spirit. And that's kind of like how it's grown. But the students that I've attracted through those phases, and then, I can almost see when those kind of changes, those shifts in energy, in my energy happened, that I started to attract a different type of student clientele. And it's been beautiful. Honestly, it's been an amazing journey. But I can tell you, your vibe attracts your tribe is not just a cliche saying. It works. It works. Your intention, where you are right now, is what you're attracting. So be careful what you're putting out there, honestly. So when the teacher is ready, the student appears. And I never really worried about attracting loads of students. They just came. And the kind of students that came were based on where I was and what I wanted to teach and what I was able to give. And that's exactly what they came to receive.
Fabulous, man. That's the thing, isn't it? It's like vibration, frequency, resonance. All these things seem to have a place in how, on where you are. Because I can see, like, just listening. I mean, this has been a very contemplative type of conversation today, because I've been reminiscing in my kind of journey and experience, and just as you've been sharing, I've been like thinking, oh yeah, that's where that's happened for me, and that's what's come out of it. And it's right, it's absolutely there. But the funny thing is, we're not all the time consciously aware of it as well. It's like almost like, we're just going through a phase, and that phase then takes you onto another journey. But this is exactly what's going on. And the idea is that when you awaken to the understanding of what that shift is going within you, you kind of then can, almost like, I suppose, almost like manifest in a way, the way and the direction you want to go. And then the people that join you on that journey, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a beautiful process, honestly. If you do it with the right intention, you do it with an open heart and open mind, you can really leave a positive imprint in people's minds, hearts, and spirit. And that there is what it's all about, because it's transformative, right? It can completely change someone's life. And I don't do it for the gratification of doing it or for the satisfaction of that. But that's just a side benefit of that, okay? I do it because that's what I'm meant to do. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm on Mother Earth. And I realized that, which is why I kept doing it a long time ago. But I couldn't verbalize it. I could not put it into words. But here we are today doing exactly this. And this is the reason why we do this, because we're born to do this, right?
Yeah, it's funny, like connecting the dots, just thinking back, thinking, wow, all those things we've done has led us to this point.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is, this is a really loaded koan. I mean, it's heavily loaded. Not only have you got 4 permutations, there's a lot more to it. But this could be a several hour long podcast, which, we're trying to kind of keep it to a reasonable time length. So I'm trying to hold back on opening up new doors, because we can go into so much more on each of the points as well. That there's a lot of depth into each and every part of this. So this is just skimming the surface, and there's other martial arts students out there. There's other martial arts teachers out there, and there's other students, teachers that are not in martial arts, but still students and teachers, and have that relationship, and have that not just a relationship as a student teacher, but a cosmic relationship where they're in each other's life for a reason. Okay. Right. And whether you realize or not. Okay. And like I said, sometimes, when a teacher is serving you, and a teacher is serving you, not necessarily through educating, inspiring, and empowering, right? But it could be through the extreme opposite type of emotions and intelligence that's coming across, but you can still learn from it, because that's what you need right there. Right. Like I said, it's helping you to identify what you don't want to be, therefore identifying what you do want to be or what you are becoming. Right. And that's important. So if you've got a teacher that you think, hold on, this person's not treating me right, think for a second, this person's in my life for a reason. What's the lesson? What can I take away from this? There's gold in that. And if you can embrace that, you'll become better for it. You're going to take away the gold, right? That teacher might not even realize they're giving it to you, but that's okay.
Yeah, that just reminds me actually, though, just quickly, like I remember one of my cousins when he was telling me about how when he was younger, he went into martial arts. And I don't think I knew at the time he was studying martial arts, but he then was telling me about how rough the class actually was. And it's like what he would share in terms of like the teacher, the other students and all that kind of stuff. And it's only later on in life that when I thought about it, I thought actually it was preparing you for what you're about to do. And the kind of area you're in and where you're doing and the direction you're going, that stuff was actually preparing him. And I think he came to realize that later on as well. That actually, had he had not gone through that kind of stuff, it could have been way different for him. So it's you're right. It just seems like there's something else going on at the deeper level of play going on here as well, isn't it? That we don't always tune into.
Exactly. And it is, one of the things that comes to mind is, especially with recent TV as well, is Cobra Kai, for instance, right? It shows the parallel teaching styles, right, between Cobra Kai, which is quite a hard, no mercy, do whatever it takes to win kind of attitude, and then there's the other side, which is a Miyagi-Do school of thought, which is be honorable, be integrous. It's not all about winning. It's about you putting your best out there. That's what counts. And you can see how both schools benefit people, right? Yeah. You see how that's playing out in the series. Though so the plot might be a little bit far-fetched or whatever you might think about it. Either way, you can see how it's working for people.
It's like the undertone of that is almost saying it's like a combination of both those things is what's needed.
I think it's yin and yang.
Yeah.
I think this a Miyagi-Do school of thought helps you recognize a Cobra Kai school of thought. And the Cobra Kai school of thought helps you recognize a Miyagi-Do school of thought. But without one or the other, they won't know any other. They won't be the wiser.
Exactly.
Right? Because they're complementary sides of a whole, right? Or should I say two sides of a coin?
Yeah.
Right. So the students in either camp are benefiting some way, right? You see that happen in the series. Right. Exactly. And in the end, spoiler alert. So if anybody's not seen it and wants to see Cobra Kai, the series, based on Karate Kid 1, 2, and 2 at the moment, then just close your ears for a moment or cover your ears, right? So that I don't spoil it. Right. But in the end, it all comes together, doesn't it? The two camps come together, right? Because they realize, right, justice is the driving force, right? And they're fighting for justice in the end.
Exactly.
Okay, so
and this opens up a whole new kind of...
Those people that cover their ears, you can uncover your ears now. All right, absolutely. So we won't say any more on that one, yeah? But yeah, it's very powerful. But so a lot of mechanics going on, loads of different ways this can transpire in life, right? Between a student and a teacher. I think this is a good point where I should read the koan. What do you reckon?
Absolutely. I was just going to say that there's so much stuff that can be uncovered and we could go further, but we'll do different podcasts on those because there's so much that's come out of this. So yes, go for it, Sifu.
Now you know why I don't want to go through this one, right? So, so when the student is unready, the teacher disappears. Old theosophical and Chinese philosophy states, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. There are various permutations of the above quote, such as when the pupil is ready, the master appears. The implication here is when the student has set his intention towards a certain outcome, the universe conspires to make it happen, and the right people, including your counsel, guides, gurus, and teachers, will appear in your path to help you point you towards your own truth. Likewise, I am also a firm believer that when the teacher is ready, the student appears. As they say, your vibe attracts your tribe. Coming back to my quote, it's also true that when the student is unready, the teacher disappears. There sometimes comes a point when the student's teacup becomes full. Therefore, the student is unable to accept more tea, i.e., knowledge and wisdom. This is a point the student becomes unready. When the student becomes unready, the best the teacher can do is exhaust every possibility of how to be of service to the student without straining in any way. If the teacher still finds that the student's teacup is full and or there is strain, then the teacher should stop pouring tea and retreat to drinking his own tea, i.e., learn from their own experience. It is at this point that the teacher liberates the students from the illusion that they are helping them grow in that moment. And this is achieved when the teacher disappears. On a flip note, when the teacher is unready, the student disappears. Also holds truth. Not all teachers hold their students' best interests at heart. This is when the teacher is unready to teach. They are no longer able to serve the student in the highest possible light and are of disservice. When the student feels violated in this way, they also have the option to withdraw from the teacher and the student disappears. Don't be fooled. The act of disappearing can serve more powerful lessons than when the student is under the instruction of the teacher or vice versa. I am a firm believer that all suffering is there to serve you lessons for you to truly reveal who you really are, your true, authentic, higher self. So look a little closer at what you're being served, no matter whether you are the student or the teacher. You are both learning, aren't you? To be clear, disappearing is not the act of vanishing without saying a word. This is just plain rude and disrespectful, but rather it's an ecological and congruent departure, maintaining your self-honesty and integrity. Whether it is the teacher or the student disappearing, with humbleness, humility, respect, and love always.
That's fantastic, man. I mean, it's just, like today has been one of those conversations where just sharing this information is giving me more insights into stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, you just more things bubbling away, these little, wisdom bombs unpacking themselves, and you're thinking, having loads of aha moments. So I hope everybody else has had those aha moments.
Absolutely. I think this is a loaded topic, as I said. So everyone's going to reflect on this in their own way, based on their own personal experiences. And really, it's about taking the lessons from this and ascending those lessons. You ascend a lesson by taking the lesson and acting on it, and then acting on it with practice, perpetual practice, which is repetition, and then you embody that lesson, and that lesson is now ascended and transcended because now it becomes part of you. Okay, so that's how.
And then you pass it forward by teaching it to others. That just adds that other layer on top of it.
Here we go. Here we are. I mean, as my final closing statements today, I'd like to basically say, when I teach, I always say that if the student is willing to put as much, if not more effort into it than I did, then the student should be better than me. Therefore, that's when the student becomes a teacher, right? And sometimes the teacher starts to learn from the student, right? So who's the teacher, who's the student? Doesn't really matter. It's not something that's set in stone. It's a dynamic relationship. You're always learning. Teachers are always learning from their students all the time. Oh, this works with this student. This doesn't work with this student, right? And how to improve the way that they teach and adapting to different students. You got to teach each student pretty much independently, because not all students learn the same way. Some students are more visual, some students are more kinesthetic, some students are more auditory, right? So you need to adapt to the style, right, that they operate in best. You got to adapt to your language also, so that you're communicating a language that another person can understand in, right? So you start to realize actually who's a student now and who's a teacher.
Absolutely, and I think that's going to be a fantastic future podcast, how we do when the student becomes a master. So stay tuned, that's coming soon as well. And yes, thank you for sharing that, Sifu Lak. it's been fascinating. And as always, people, we're reading these from The Art of Thinking Without Thinking. It's available on Amazon or martianmindpower.com. Get yourself a copy, go through it. I'm sure, you'll be inspired. We're always left in awe, even though, this book Sifu put together, but we have conversations about it, and it just leads us to deeper conversations. So thank you for sharing that knowledge and information as well, Sifu Lak. And I think on that note, guys, until next time, signing out.